Imagine the perfect video store. It would have a great selection, right? Right! Over 10,000 videos. 3 evening rentals, so no rush, no hassle. Fast checkout. 24-hour quick drop return. Open late every night. Well, the perfect video store
Welcome to BlockBuster Video.
is popping up all over the country. There's one near you.
BlockBuster Video. Wow, what a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Nick, and again with my co-host.
Oh, you didn't know? It's Phil Money.
Today, guys, we're going to talk about the archaic, archaeological, before technology came around, video stores.
Oh, yeah.
Now, believe it or not, kids, you actually had to leave the house in order to get a videotape, and a VHS tape for that.
Good old 90s.
Yeah, you didn't just turn on your PS3 or your TV and get on Netflix. You had to actually leave the house.
This was back in the day of either dial-up internet or no internet.
Yeah. Now, video stores, from what I understand, pretty much started in the late 70s. Because it was, pretty much you went to the movies and, you would buy the VHS tape, and a lot of times the movies wouldn't come out till like 7-8 months later.
Right.
It wasn't like now where it comes out next month and a month later it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to wait a long time. So the idea of going to a store, paying a couple dollars, and renting a movie was a fairly new concept. They had, Betamax, which is a smaller version of VHS, and eventually it would go into Laserdisc, and then, DVD and so forth. But we're going to start out with what we used, and that was the VHS tape. You went into the store, and most stores, except for BlockBuster, eventually, they had one copy of everything. That was it.
All right.
So if they were out of your Ghostbusters too, you had to wait. That was it. Now, and of course they also had that room that you couldn't go into. The dirty room. Yeah, the XXX room. So, what are some of the tapes that you remember renting, like, vividly?
Oh, dude, I got a lot. Like, I always went to Hollywood Video for the longest time until they closed, and then that's when I started going to BlockBuster.
Right.
Excuse me. But Hollywood Video, because it was like a 2-minute drive or whatever from my house. We'd always go there. My dad would take me, and we'd go on a Friday, Saturday night, sometimes both nights in a row, and we'd go rent movies. And as soon as you walk in, there's the horror movie section.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you walk into that front entrance, it's like right there. You got they probably had 10 or 12 shelves of horror movies, and there were like, I think they had 8 shelves per case, I guess. So you had the horror movies, and then you had the sports, the wrestling, and then you went into your comedies and your dramas and action and stuff like that. It was in that specific order. But I would always hit the horror movie section, the wrestling section first. Some of the tapes I always rented, Return of the Living Dead. I probably rented that movie a couple hundred times. Mm-hmm. Because that was before you could get it. We didn't have internet, so you couldn't order on it.
Plus, VHS tapes, when you bought them, were expensive.
Right.
They weren't $20. A lot of the tapes, pricey. You'd pay $34, $40 for a tape.
Yeah.
And the thing about, you had Hollywood Video, which I did too, but since we lived in Westville and it was closer, we had Old Town Video, which they had a Danville location too, but it was literally about 2 minutes away. Mm-hmm. And even though it was a relatively small building, we also had Westville Video, which was over by our local Legion.
Okay.
And it was,
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was about the size of a small living room.
Mm.
You had your Nintendo games, your Super Nintendo, horror section, action, comedy, and then they also had a section which was kind of miscellaneous. You had like monster truck shows, hunting shows. You had like hunting with Ted Nugent. You know, it was just random stuff.
Right.
And it was nice because, I mean, we didn't know any different because we didn't have anything else. You got to read the case. You got to see the cover.
The pictures on the
back.
back.
And you read the synopsis of what the movie was about. And a lot of times, I would pick movies by the cover of the case. I would. I'd be like, oh, that looks really cool.
To cut into that, that's the good thing about Netflix that they've done more recently. When you go on a specific show or movie, it shows a trailer.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm glad they started
that's
doing
really
that.
great.
Yeah.
Because if you look now, like a VHS tapes, it would have previews of other movies.
Oh yeah.
And it would say before your feature presentation.
They'd have like
nowadays when you buy a DVD, before it would have previews, but now a lot of times you could skip through it.
Oh, you can skip it.
Or it'll just go directly to the menu.
Yeah, I mean you can skip it on VHS. It just takes a bit.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the different speeds
Right,
that you can do
right.
like you do on digital.
I remember one movie I actually ended up buying eventually just because it was just a movie I loved so much. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I probably rented that movie at least 100 times.
Right.
Along with Ernest. Ernest Goes to Camp, you know, or Ernest Goes to Jail. What were some of the other ones? Rambo. There was another one that was kind of, I mean, like, unless you watched it, a lot of people probably don't even really remember it. It was a movie called Josh and Sam.
I remember that.
Yeah. It was these two kids that were tired of their parents fighting all the time. And they stole their dad's Ferrari and took off.
Right.
And it was literally them going state to state with like their parents' stolen credit card and like having a ball. And I kid you not, the movie never came out on DVD. The only way you can get it is if you can possibly find a torrent or a VHS copy.
Oh, really?
But yeah, a lot of people, when I mention it to them, they're like, what?
I remember always seeing that on trailers.
Yeah.
For other VHS.
Where I seen I actually have the tape and I have the DVD too, but that movie called Man of the House with Chevy Chase and Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yeah.
The VHS copy, it shows a trailer of Josh and Sam. And I looked for the trailer on YouTube and there's tons of people that are like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this movie. And I was like, I remember renting it. Or do you remember that movie, Prehistoric?
Yeah. Or Prehistoric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the dinosaurs?
Yeah, the little baby dinosaurs.
Uh-huh.
They ended up making like, what, 4 or 5 sequels of that? But yeah, back to the movies I used to rent all the time from Hollywood Video. Like I said, Return of the Living Dead was one of them. Terror Train. All the Friday the 13th movies. Halloween movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. American Gothic, American Scream, you know, just a lot of these cheesy 80s horror movies. And then, like I said, the wrestling too. My favorites were their Survivor series, you know, from the early 90s, late 80s. Would always get those. The Royal Rumbles were some more of my favorites from the
Super Tape,
late 80s, 90s.
where they would have like compilations of matches.
Yeah.
When they closed down, I bought a lot of them.
Yeah.
Because if you remember correctly, you could buy the VHS tapes in stores, but they were super expensive.
Yeah.
You paid $29 for one tape. Before they were widely distributed by Coliseum Video, the only way you could watch them is either you watched it on TV, or they would have the compilations of like Invasion of the Body Slammers, and you'd have to rent it.
Right.
That was the only way you can get it.
Right.
And the bad thing about it was VHS tapes. It was a good technology for the time, but like you've noticed, we all have over the years, they degrade.
Yeah, they do.
The more you watch them, the more the picture gets bad. But there's just something about popping in a VHS, watching the
Brings
previews.
back good memories.
Yeah, very. I'm 32, which you are as well. And if you've noticed, everything we grew up with is now considered to be retro.
All right.
The other day I was listening to a radio station. It was 94.5, and it was 90s at noon. And they were playing Return to the Mac, which came out about 98. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Listen to it. And someone called in, and it was a trivia question about something, and somebody goes, yeah, I love listening to vintage music. I was like, vintage music? For real?
It happens.
Like, vintage music for me would be like Pink Floyd.
Well, yeah, that's our generation.
Yeah, that's our generation. Like I grew up watching, listening to Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, people like that. But the other thing that was really cool about video stores, if you remember this correctly, you could rent a VHS player.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because VCRs were expensive.
Mm.
I remember
you can rent video game systems too.
Yeah,
Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega's.
The only system I ever rented, because we didn't have it and I didn't want to buy one, I rented. It came out in '96.
Game Genie.
No, I rented a 64.
Oh, okay.
I never owned one. I do now, but I didn't then.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that came around, I had already went to PlayStation. So I didn't want to buy one, so I rented it from BlockBuster. I think it was like $20. I rented GoldenEye, Mario 64, the typical stuff. One of my greatest, really close memories that I can remember was going into Old Time Video, and the one in Danville. And have you ever noticed that it's gone now? You don't see movie standees anymore. Even in movie theaters, you really don't too much. Mm-mm. Like, let's say they were doing a RoboCop movie, and they'd have a standee of RoboCop.
Yeah.
Or, like, you go into the Carasotas up there in Danville, used to be called Carasotas.
Yeah.
You'd see a standee for Indiana Jones.
Right.
And it would be, a big standee of the big boulder rolling at him, You see posters. That's about it.
Right.
And a lot of times you don't even see that anymore. I remember they had this fake-looking balcony in the Danville one, and it had RoboCop up there, and I believe it was RoboCop 2, and it had him sitting there holding a gun, getting out of the car, out of the police car, and then down on the bottom, they were advertising Beverly Hills Cop, and it had Eddie Murphy getting out of the red Ferrari. And for some reason, I wanted to buy it. Well, eventually they gave them away, after a while. I ended up getting a Ernest Goes to Camp poster. It's in a box somewhere, rolled up in a tube. I'm going to get a frame for it, but it's an original one from that year. And I remember Old Time Video gave it to me. Besides Hollywood Video, like, what do you remember when you started going to BlockBuster? Was it shortly after they closed?
It was after Hollywood closed. It was like when I went to Hollywood Forever. When I turned 18, you can get your card, your membership card. Was it 18 or was it 16? It was 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 18. I got my card, and I shit you not, shortly after that, they went to that other building, the newer one.
Yeah.
And then I didn't make it, and it closed.
Yeah.
After that, I started going to BlockBuster. I think I started going to BlockBuster in 2003, somewhere around there.
That's when I got my own membership card.
Yeah.
I was so proud.
Yeah, I went to BlockBuster, and
I still have it.
Yeah. I did notice that, because like I said, I'm a horror movie fan, so that's the first place I automatically check. They had movies that Hollywood Video didn't have. They also had movies that Hollywood Video did have.
Yeah.
So, it was okay. And then, honestly, when did BlockBuster close?
I want to say 2013, 2014, something
okay.
like that.
Yeah, because I got my ID or my membership card in 2003. Then I went away to college, and then by the time I came back, I maybe went there. I didn't go there as much as Hollywood because it was more pricey. It was like $3.99.
Yeah, it was.
Hollywood Video, I think the new releases were $3, the old movies were $2, and then you could do 5 movies for $5 for 5 nights.
Yep.
That's how I rented a lot of the horror movies, the comedies, the wrestling movies. So, I mean, honestly, I wasn't a huge Blockbuster customer. I mean, they were good for new releases. You know, they had a lot of copies of whatever was new at the time compared to what Hollywood Video had at the time. I just liked Hollywood Video more because they had more of a selection of the older movies.
When Westwood Video closed, and if I remember correctly, I think they closed in like maybe 97. Old Time Video closed in 99, unexpectedly. It was a mom and pop place. They owned 2 different locations, and they just closed. That's when I started going to Blockbuster pretty much full time. I remember going in there, and I don't know why I remember this, but it was right around the time when they started getting rid of all their VHS and going strictly to DVD. I started buying VHS because they were selling them off for like $1 a piece. I mean, they just wanted them gone.
Right.
That's when I got a lot of my retro video games that are now worth a lot of money, because they were literally selling all their 64, Super Nintendo games for like $2 a piece. And which, oddly enough, there's a video game out there that is considered to be one of the most rarest Nintendo games. It's called Flintstones at Dinosaur Peak. The game's worth $700 because it was a Blockbuster exclusive.
Oh, really?
The only reason why they got out in the public was because when they started liquidating their older games, people got a hold of them. There's like 50 in existence, maybe. So, when they started getting rid of all their wrestling tapes, that's when I picked them up. Around 2003 is when I got my own card. I still have it. I remember the last movie I rented. I stopped going to Blockbuster around 2009 because by that point, I started, I guess you'd call it, not really bootlegging, but people that I knew started to get movies and would, lend them to me, stuff like that. And then I started collecting DVDs, so there was no need for me to go pay $3.99 for a movie that I rent once. I think the biggest thing, and it's not necessarily just nostalgic speaking, it's kids nowadays won't know how awesome it was to go into Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or any video store on a Friday night with your mom and dad and pick out some video games for that weekend and eat some pizza, because back in the day Domino's used to offer an offer where they were coinciding with Blockbuster, where you'd buy like a medium pizza, get 3 rentals free.
Really?
Yeah. Pizza Hut started to do that. And like I was telling my niece, who, obviously doesn't remember Blockbuster. I think she's like 12. So, I mean, she was real little when they closed and, when it was still going on. I watched a documentary, which I shared it with you, that one of the last remaining video stores, almost. This guy started his video store in the late 70s and just now closed about a year ago. He was still renting movies. And like people said that were in the town, it's almost as if technology has made us too clean. Like, we don't have to leave the house anymore. You can now order groceries online and have them delivered to your house.
Right.
You don't even have to go grocery shopping anymore. The last movie that I went to in the theater was Suicide Squad. I went to go see it with you. I have not been to a movie since then because it's too expensive. And a lot of times, I don't like to go by myself because I always feel like the weirdo of like, why is that guy by himself? Does he stink or something? Because I went to a movie by myself once, and it was a horrible experience. Because the whole time, I'm sitting there with my popcorn and my soda, and everybody's looking at me. And I'm like, the hell are you looking at me for? My girlfriend's in the bathroom. She'll be back. Not really, but I actually have... I know it might not seem a big deal to some people, but I actually have quite a few video games and VHSs that are from our video stores, and it actually says at the bottom, Old Time Video, Hollywood Video. I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, to that, me, it may not be worth anything, but to me, it's worth a lot.
Right.
When you were talking about the horror movies, the good thing about video stores was nowadays when you go into stores, you have people who necessarily don't give a crap about their job. When you'd go into Hollywood Video, the clerk in any video store was always a cinephile. He would always be an expert on everything. Same thing with music stores. You'd go in there and it'd be like, "Hey Barry, yeah, what's up, man? How's Sleepaway Camp? Oh man, I watched it the other day," and he'd tell you a huge synopsis of the movie.
Right.
And sometimes they'd have staff picks. Where,
I remember that.
And it would be like, Tracy picks Sling Blade. And it would say why. Or this month during Halloween, we are featuring Nightmare on Elm Street. Something like that. And, they'd have like a little list up there and it'd be like, Freddy's back in part 5. Even the movie trailers. Remember when you'd go into the video stores and there'd be a monitor on the ceiling?
BlockBuster, yeah. They had the TV screens.
Yeah.
The trailers.
Family Video still does this, oddly enough.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. But like you'd be in there and you'd hear "in a world." Even though technically that word was never actually uttered. Because the guy that actually did the movie trailer, his name was Don LaFontaine. He did thousands of them. And there's other movie trailer guys, but he was one of the most famous ones because of his voice. The ones now just aren't really that great. Like you'll be in the store and it'll be like, Bob was a normal guy. And it flashes up on the screen 25 years later, and it's like a former ex-con is visited by his past.
Right.
And it's like, where have I seen this plot before?
Well, that's what pisses me off about trailers nowadays.
They reveal
give away
too much?
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's like, I've seen the whole fucking movie already. It's like, what the hell?
The last movie that I remember actually very excited to see, and it wasn't because of the trailer, it was because of the story behind the movie, that was Deadpool. Because it was a movie that was done, and in the way that it was done, it was almost like anti-establishment. It was like, okay, we're going to make a movie for the people. It's kind of like nowadays when you read movie reviews, it's almost as if somebody goes into the movie already being negative before it even starts. A prime example, Baywatch. We all knew that it was going to be a parody. It wasn't supposed to be a serious film. So, movie stores promoted too. They had posters, they had pamphlets up at the counter that said, coming next month, Christmas Vacation, Children of the Corn 4, something like that. And I remember at BlockBuster and I think Hollywood Video one time, they had a big fish bowl that was filled. You'd put your name on it and they would draw your name and they'd call you and be like, you won 4 free rentals. And I'd be like, yes. And I actually won one time and it was like 5 free rentals. And they gave me a little chip and I would go in there and, they'd give me my rentals. The lady that worked at the counter, I don't remember her name. She was really super nice, very knowledgeable. She started working at Old Time Video and then she went to BlockBuster. She worked there forever. She was such a nice lady. But I'd go in there and those type of people that worked in those stores, they cared about their job because they appreciated the customers appreciated them. It was, hey John, what's that? Like you'd be like, hey, what's that movie that had Kurt Russell in it and he played this part? And they'd be able to go, Roadhouse. And, you'd give them the slightest detail or it'd be something obscure. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that film. And you guys would talk about it for like 20 minutes. And then, they wouldn't rush you out of there. They'd be like, all right, see you later. Have a good day, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't pressure you into buying candy and shit like that. They'd want to talk to you. And it's because they were genuinely passionate about movies. Same thing with the companies itself. BlockBuster was a corporation, but they had good employees. The Hollywood Video, you'd go in there, local place. You know, it was also a tanning place too, so you also had that. You'd have the mixture of like popcorn and burnt skin.
I always thought that was odd that they added tanning.
It was strange because you'd smell like cocoa butter. Like you'd walk in
the
there.
horror movie section.
Yeah, it's like
that's where they were.
Yeah, it's like, what is that? It smells like cocoa butter in here. And I remember one of the last times I went to Hollywood Video, I didn't even know they were closing. I don't think anybody did. I went in there and they were getting rid of all their VHS tapes. And I bought a couple of Super Nintendo games that were in there. Oddly enough, they were still there after all the years. I don't know why. And about a month later, I drove by and there was a sign on the window. Closed. I'm like, well, that's weird because the one in Georgetown stayed open longer.
Stayed open, yeah.
I'm like, what happened? No one knew. Even the employees didn't even know. They just closed. Oddly enough, they had one in Champaign. This is how funny it is. They opened a liquor store there.
Hollywood Liquor.
Yeah, they did not change the sign. They left it up and added liquor to it. That's all they did. I was like, I told people, I was like, you know, it used to be a video store. For real? What was it called? Hollywood.
Hollywood Video.
They're like, really? I go, yeah, they just added liquor on the bottom. That's all they did. They didn't change anything. Like, you go in there and it still looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's unfortunately, you know, technically BlockBuster still lives. There are 10 stores left.
Yeah.
They're franchise stores.
There's one in
Indiana. Yeah. Some in Mexico. I think there's one in Texas, Virginia. There's like 10 stores total. And they're just like they were back then. They have all new releases. Like nothing's ever changed.
And then they have the popcorn, the candy, the pop.
I was like, because when I seen a video of a guy that went to the one in Indiana.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he went into it, and it was like going back in time. I was like, wow. And he's looking around, and every new movie that came out that month is on the shelf. And it's just this guy who bought his franchise. When they folded, you could buy the name and keep your store, and he did. And apparently they still make money off of it. It's just kind of strange. I was like, is that place abandoned? Which, did you know that BlockBuster is actually, between BlockBuster, Walmart, and Hills Department Store, those three companies are the most abandoned buildings in the United States.
Really?
Up until 2 months ago, there was an empty BlockBuster in Champaign.
Yeah, I remember that.
Sat there.
Yeah.
Ever since they closed many years ago, it's been empty. I looked online, and you look around in different cities, Pizza Hut is another one. Those stores, oddly enough, I don't know whether it's because nothing else wanted to go in it, but in certain cities, if you look around the town, it's an empty Pizza Hut, it's an empty BlockBuster, it's a abandoned Walmart. There was one in Oklahoma that was near a relative of mine. It was as if they came up to our Walmart, big Walmart, just shut it down one day, and the place has been empty for 10 years. It's like the corporation was like, we'll just build another one. And that's what they did. They just shut the whole thing down, laid off all the employees, and left it. And I was like, wow. But yeah, with the death of the video store, BlockBuster kind of did it to themselves. They had the option of buying Netflix. And they didn't think Netflix was going to turn into anything. By the time BlockBuster found out that online was the way, because they started the BlockBuster online, it was too late.
Yeah.
It was around a year or so after Netflix caught on kind of big. They started the BlockBuster online, where you can get them in the mail, return them in store, rent them in the store, whatever. It was too late. The company was dissolved. It was sold to Sony. Sony still owns the rights, technically. DirecTV actually owns it right now, I think. Because DirecTV bought it after Sony had it. Because DirecTV was doing the whole BlockBuster Online thing. But as of right now, they were gonna try to still keep the BlockBuster Online going, but a year after they closed, they ended up just discontinuing the whole thing. Which, oddly enough, I don't know whether you know this or not. This is a little bit of an extra tidbit for you listeners out there. BlockBuster had his own music store.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
Mm-mm.
I seen this when I was in Indianapolis back in 1998. We're driving through Indianapolis. Went to a mall over there, and I look over in the shopping center, and I see this big sign that says BlockBuster, and then I see right next to us is BlockBuster Music.
Huh.
BlockBuster was connected. They had the regular store, and they had BlockBuster Music right in it. It was literally a music store. They sold keyboards, musical instruments, CDs, DVDs, you name it. I don't know if there was many of them, but it did exist. And if I had never seen it, I would have never known. I was like, that is really strange.
Yeah.
And when we came back into town, I remember talking to an employee at BlockBuster, and he goes, "Oh yeah, there's quite a few, just not around, close to here, other than there." And I was like, okay, new to me. But what do you think? I mean, because obviously with Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, everybody's getting into movies. We got Crackle. We got
Crackle.
The devices with the Roku, the Amazon Fire Sticks. DVDs are very cheap now. You can pick them up used for a couple bucks a piece, $5 bin. Same thing with any physical media for the most part. DVDs are obviously going to be around for a long time. Same thing with Blu-ray. Then you got 4K now, which 4K, Jesus, it's like $30 for a 4K version of something. There ain't no way I'd pay that much.
No, I wouldn't.
No, that's crazy. In your opinion, when do you think, besides obviously, when BlockBuster closed and then, our local Hollywood Video, do you think it was kind of driven on the cost of renting? Because, Hollywood Video was pretty cheap. But, like you said, it was $3.99 per tape or DVD at BlockBuster. And then you had the rental fees, if it was a late fee. I think after a while, the cost is what did it. When you could pay $9 a month and get them in the mail, why would you want to go in the middle of the night, have to return your tapes?
A day later.
Yeah, a day later. I laugh whenever I pull open one of my VHS tapes and it says, "Please be kind, rewind."
Yeah.
Or what was it? They always had another saying on there where it was, "To rewind is divine," something like that. It was like, "To view is human, to rewind is divine." Yeah, believe it or not, that was one of the sayings they had on some of the tapes. But it's just crazy to think that physical media is on its way out.
Yeah.
iTunes. You just told me you downloaded the new Lucky Boys Confusion. A lot of CDs, if I really like the band, I will make the effort to buy it.
Right.
But a lot of times it's just easier to go on iTunes, click, automatically right to you.
Takes you 5 minutes.
Yeah, same thing with movies. You can buy it digitally off Amazon if you want. The other day, I got on Amazon Prime and they had a couple movies on there that are pretty pricey to buy. It was Tapeheads, which we talked about. It's a pretty pricey movie because it's an older out-of-print movie. Dead Man on Campus.
Yep.
$12 because it's an out-of-print movie. Or you can buy it digitally for $2. It's Just like it's a matter of preference. Me, I personally would rather have shelves of DVDs.
Right.
Versus, well, I got a flash drive over there full of stuff. You know?
It's just not the same.
It's just not the same.
Yeah,
But,
I'd rather have, just like books too, I'd rather have a...
I can't read a
copy
book
of
on a
book.
digital device.
Mm-mm.
I can't do it.
Nope. I got a Kindle, but I never use it to read. I play games on it. You know,
Yeah.
Plants vs. Zombies or some shit.
I got a tablet through Verizon that I use for, you know, like, if I don't want to use my laptop or my phone, you know, I'll look up videos and stuff, but there's an app on there to download books, and I'm like, no, it's okay. Because it's just not the same. I'd rather turn the page as opposed to, you know, use my finger to swipe through it. It's just, I don't know.
Right.
It's just, maybe it's just because I'm stuck in my old ways, but, you know, I didn't grow up with a tablet. Nowadays, you know, the kids, it cracks me up because you go out to eat and you see these parents and their kid's like 5. What's he doing? Playing on a tablet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know what I was doing when I was 5? Eating breadsticks. Coloring. You know, you go to Garfield's, you have that little coloring cup with the crayons, you write on the table, bugging the crap out of your parents. Which is why they do it. They hand them a tablet or a phone and they go, here, Junior. You know, so they're not screaming at their parents. Or, here's a little quick story. When I was about 6, nothing's changed. I still fart like a fucking goose. But, I was about 6 years old. We were at Long John Silver's. I stood up in my chair and thought it was hilarious. And I embarrassed my brother. I blasted one. Like, I just ripped one. And, you know, of course, everybody was like, oh, it's just a kid. You know, he farted. It's not that big a deal. But if I did that now at 32 years old, I'd be kicked out. You know, if I stood up in the middle of a restaurant and was like, they'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you? Get out of here. You're gross. But it's one of those things where parents will tell you this, you know, would it be easier to just download a movie or get it on Netflix versus packing the kids up in the car, taking them to the video store, and going, okay, pick out some cartoons. Mm-hmm. Now it's, hey, you want to watch Pet Patrol or Paw Patrol? You want to watch your Wiggles or your Dora? There you go. It's right there. You know, it's, you don't have to pay for anything because you've already bought the subscription. Problem solved. But before we go, you know, for your listeners out there, for people that grew up in our generation and even before, you know how much video stores meant to us. It shaped us as video viewers. It shaped us as people who developed our personalities about, you know, like, it wasn't just about movies. It was the experience of, I got to know that actor because I watched Top Gun. And it was like, I went to the video store and I saw it on the shelf and I read the description and I said, I want to take that home. And then you pop it in your VCR and you're immediately transported to whatever movie you're watching.
Right.
And I mean, so you still get that experience somewhat, but it's not the same as bringing it up on the screen. Bloop, click, ready to go. Pause it. Boop, you know, you want to watch it later? You can watch it later. You don't have to pay for it again.
All right.
But anyways, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all later.